Money and kids. When it comes to creating an estate plan, one of the things that's kind of important is RESPs if you're saving for a kid's education, but they are often left out of the process. And there are some things that you actually should know to ensure that that RESP can continue in the event of your death. Woo! Jazzy fun topic. To talk about some of the considerations that you need to make and things that you need to think about, we're joined by Daniel Goldgut. He is the co-founder and CEO of Epilogue Wills. Hello there.
Hi, Bruce.
If you do nothing specific in your will, so you're a parent, you've set up these RESPs for your kid. If you do nothing specific in your will, what happens to your kid's RESP?
So if you do nothing, there are some consequences, which is that the money in that account will go to your estate. And one of the consequences of that is that the tax benefits are lost. So all the hard work that you did in setting up that account and having that money available for your children, for their education, that money goes into your estate, and some of the benefits that you were hoping to get by setting it up in the first place are gone.
Now, when you say the tax benefits, are you talking tax or are you talking about the government grant?
So more the government grant, but there are some tax implications as well, in that the money that is sitting in your RESP is growing tax-free. So you're right, there is a government grant that they give to help support your effort to save for your children's education. And the money that's sitting in that account grows tax-free, and there can be some clawback, so to speak, if that money ends up in your estate and not going towards education.
So Daniel, just to be clear, the government contributes 20%. That maxes out on an annual basis. It maxes out on a lifetime of something like $7,200 or so. Are you saying that that could get clawed back?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
What if I am married? Does the RESP, can my spouse be the subscriber to that RESP?
Yes, so it's a good point. So oftentimes when spouses set up an RESP, they'll do it jointly, where both of the spouses are subscribers to the plan, which means that when the first spouse passes away, the surviving spouse continues to be a subscriber of the plan. And so that money does not go into the residue of anyone's estate at that time. So very common to do it that way. And so what needs to happen is, because we don't know in what order people will pass, if each person makes a provision in their will that if they are the surviving subscriber, that things will be dealt with.
Okay, so we've said here are the risks. There are challenges here. As someone is doing their will, what are the specifics that need to happen to reduce the risks?
So it's actually pretty simple, which is that you can include a provision in your will that names a successor subscriber. So oftentimes that can be the executor of your estate. That same person, you can give that person the role of being the successor subscriber, which means that they can continue to make contributions and they can keep that money available for the beneficiaries. And just doing that, including it in your will, preserves those benefits.
Epilogue is an online platform. I've gone through it. You and I have spoken in the past. And one of the things that's really helpful about it and other online will providers is that it prompts you. So it's harder for things to get left out because you're kind of forced to answer these questions. On Epilogue, is there a prompt here? Will it not allow me to move on if I've said I've got kids and I haven't done taken the appropriate action on the RESP?
So we ask one question earlier in the process that just asks, do you have a registered education savings plan in place for your children or anyone else? And if someone answers that question as yes, then later we ask, do you want to give your executor the ability to manage your RESP after your death? And what we've seen is that putting it in front of people in that way, almost everybody chooses yes. There's no real downside of choosing no. And so once it's presented, on Epilogue, it's 2 clicks, it's 2 simple yeses, and then when the document comes out, it includes the necessary language.
I think this is a really important distinction here to reinforce that it's the subscriber's money. It goes in the subscriber's estate, because how we talk about the RESP in our family is that it's not my money, that it's my child's money. But you're saying in practice, that's not accurate, that it rolls up to my estate.
That's right. If it remains in the RESP, then yes, it will go out to that.
So I could lord that over my child in a much more effective way than I have in the past. Geez, I'm going to have to change my parenting style on that. Heaven forbid. This is an appropriate question, but it's a worrying one for every parent. What happens if the beneficiary dies? So you've got one kid, and you lose that kid before they access the full sum of that RESP. What happens to those funds?
So there are some rules in the worlds of RESPs that would deal with that. And, a similar thing, if that child decides not to pursue education that the RESP is set out to provide for. So there are rules about what happens, and essentially that money sort of makes its way back into the hands of the subscriber. And there are certainly some, not penalties, that's probably the wrong term, but similar to as what we said before, a clawback where sort of those full benefits aren't realized.
Obviously, for people who have children, one of the biggest concerns that we have is the well-being of our children after we pass, in particular when they're younger, but certainly as we're older as well. What are the other parts of this process as it relates to our kids that we really need to think about as we're developing the estate plan?
So I'll focus on two in particular. One is guardianship, and then the second is the distribution of assets. So when it comes to guardianship, as you mentioned, having kids is a real motivator for people to making their wills and completing their estate plans. But when they get to this question about who should be the guardian of their minor children, it's a stumbling block. It's really hard to picture anyone else in that role. And so often people get to that question and then they're not really sure what to do. But naming a guardian is very, very important, because that is a very strong factor that a court will look at in deciding who should take care of your minor children. So even if it feels like there's no perfect choice, it's better to do something, leave someone's name there that you trust, and you can change it over time. So it might be that at this point in your life, if you've got young kids, that your parents who are still relatively young might be a good fit for that role to take care of your young kids. But maybe 5 years from now, 10 years from now, your parents are a little bit older and they're not the best choice anymore. And at that point, you look around and say, okay, who might be the best choice now? Also, you might know more about your kids once they're 5, 7, 10, 12 in terms of who they are and what they like and where the best fit would be. So guardianship, very important and pretty straightforward to do. And then the second one I'll mention is the distribution of assets. So when you're leaving money to a minor, it's important that that money is held in a trust, right? No one is paying out a sum of money to a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old. That money gets held in trust until that child reaches a specific age. So using a platform like Epilogue, you can decide what that age is. So you might think that at 18, you would be comfortable with them receiving their inheritance, or 21 or 25 or some later age than that. And in those trusts, it's important to know that oftentimes the trust is set up in a way that the trustee of the trust, the person who is actually managing the funds, can distribute some money earlier than that final age that you set, if it's for health or education, support, things of that nature.
Just before we go here, we have had this conversation. I have had 14,852 conversations about the importance of wills. We have not moved the needle one single percentage point in terms of the number of adult Canadians who have not completed this step. What is the single most important message that you would communicate to incent people, motivate people, cajole people to doing this piece of paperwork?
You've asked for one, but I'm going to give you two.
Okay.
And I hope that that's okay.
Totally fine.
So the first is that this really is an important thing to do for the people that you leave behind. for your family and friends. I had a discussion with someone recently who knows that this is sort of the area that I'm in, who said that her father-in-law had passed away without a will, and that they were now into year 4 or 5 of trying to sort of tie up all of these loose ends. And it really impacted the way that they feel about this person, their memory of this person. And so the simple act of creating a will can be so powerful in that it leaves that important lasting legacy to your family and friends that you did this for them. That's the first part. The second part is that it's actually not so hard to do. And so if that first part is meaningful to you, and you understand now that there are some ways that you can get this done, and it doesn't have to take so much time or cost so much money or be so difficult, put those two things together. Hopefully that can help to start moving that needle.
Really, really helpful stuff, Daniel. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bruce.
Daniel Goldgut is the co-founder and CEO of Epilogue Wills, and we were talking about one particular aspect of your will, often overlooked, and that is what to do about a registered education saving plan that you've got for your kid, how to make sure that that works and is funded and is available for your kids in the event of your death.